It is an exhausting, invisible psychological prison that silently drains the vitality of some of the most empathetic adults. You walk into a room, a workplace, or a family gathering, and your nervous system instantly reads the emotional temperature of the environment. The literal second you detect that someone around you is anxious, angry, or unstable, your body undergoes an immediate involuntary transformation. Your chest tightens, your heart rate accelerates, and a cold wave of hyper-vigilant responsibility floods your system. You feel a compulsive, suffocating urge to step in, manage their emotions, solve their problems, and absorb their chaos, just to bring the room back to a calm baseline. You sacrifice your own time, boundaries, and mental peace to act as a physical shield for other adults. Most people look at this pattern and label it as simple kindness, high empathy, or a helpful personality. They wear it as a badge of honor, assuming it is a moral strength. But the reality behind this compulsive caretaking has nothing to do with genuine altruism or choice. What you are experiencing is an acute, predictable survival reflex, driven by your brain's threat-appraisal networks. Your mind is not failing. Your ancient safety mechanisms have simply learned to equate absorbing other people's distress with your own physical survival. To understand why your brain treats other people's chaos as an immediate emergency, we must look past your kindness and dissect the neurobiology of externalized safety. To decipher the mechanical origin of the fixer trap, we must trace how the brain's primary threat detection center is physically wired during early development. This process is governed by the amygdala, working in tight synchronization with the mirror neuron system. In a stable, predictable childhood environment, the amygdala operates at a calm baseline, leaving the child free to focus on internal growth. However, if you grow up in an environment characterized by adult instability, emotional volatility, or unpredictable outbursts, your brain undergoes a radical survival adaptation. To protect your vulnerable system, your amygdala expands its radar. It becomes hyper-sensitized to the subtlest shifts in adult facial expressions, vocal tones, and body language. Your brain learns to treat an adult's negative mood not as an external event, but as an immediate life-threatening danger to your physical security. This hyper-vigilance alters your neural architecture. The brain builds high-velocity superhighways between your sensory inputs and your panic buttons. When an adult is unstable, your child's survival brain realizes that the only way to make the danger stop is to fix the adult's emotion. You learn to manage their chaos to secure your own safety, burning a hyper-reactive alarm system into your neural pathways that remains fully active into your independent adult life. The relentless physical exhaustion of the fixer personality is driven by the structural overactivation of your mirror neuron system. Mirror neurons are specialized cells located in your premotor cortex and inferior parietal lobule that fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing that same action, essentially allowing you to mentally simulate and feel another person's internal experience. In a highly analytical and hypervigilant adult, this simulation engine operates at an extreme volume. When someone near you walks into a room radiating intense stress or anger, your mirror neurons do not just register the emotion abstractly. They force your central nervous system to physically recreate the somatic state of that stress inside your own body. Your brainstem interprets this simulated distress as your own personal emergency. This creates a severe state of cognitive clutter and emotional overload. Your working memory is entirely choked by the metabolic demands of processing another human being's psychological storm. To stop your own nervous system from drowning in this simulated panic, your prefrontal cortex assumes manual control, forcing you to compulsively fix their problem simply to shut off the violent mirror neuron feedback loop that is tearing through your own flesh. The true psychological trap of absorbing other people's chaos is locked within a profound communication error between your internal organs and your threat networks. As we have established across this archive, over 80% of the fibers within your vagus nerve are dedicated to carrying interoceptive data up from your body to your brain, rather than down. When your mirror neurons simulate someone else's instability, your sympathetic nervous system instantly slams on the accelerator, elevating your heart rate and constricting your stomach muscles within 12 milliseconds. A split second later, your slow analytical prefrontal cortex boots up and realizes your physical flesh is vibrating with terror. This triggers a severe interoceptive mismatch. Your conscious mind looks at your life and knows you are completely safe, but your internal organs are screaming that a life-threatening crisis is actively occurring. Because the survival brain cannot tolerate a contradiction, it prioritizes the physical panic over reality. It assumes that as long as the other person is distressed, your heart will keep racing, forcing your logical mind to warp its perspective to match the chemistry. It converts their external problem into your absolute current emergency, trapping your consciousness in a compulsive cycle of forced co-regulation. The immediate cognitive consequence of this interoceptive mismatch is a highly destructive behavioral loop known as the cognitive illusion of externalized worth. Because your brain hates mystery and cannot stand experiencing intense physical tension without a clear reason, it forces you to build your entire self-identity around your utility. Your prefrontal cortex invents the deceptive narrative that your value as a human being is entirely dependent on your ability to be useful, solve crises, and alleviate the pain of others. You form the rigid core belief that you are only safe and lovable when you are actively serving as an emotional buffer. But from a neurological perspective, this belief does something entirely opposite. Every time you step in to absorb someone else's chaos, you are handing fresh, high-resolution raw data directly to your hyper-reactive threat center. The low road routes this data straight to your amygdala, triggering an even larger explosion of adrenaline. The fixing behavior becomes the exact mechanism that feeds the fire. You are trapped in an addiction-like state where your brain uses compulsive caretaking as a temporary emotional defense, completely unaware that it is actively burning the toxic chemistry of self-neglect deeper into your own long-term neural pathways. To fully map out this psychological loop, we must evaluate how the fixer personality completely hijacks your brain's selective attention filters via the reticular activating system, or the RAS. The RAS acts as the primary gatekeeper for your consciousness, deciding which environmental details enter your active awareness and which are discarded as background noise. When your threat networks are hyper-sensitized to external instability, your RAS takes its filtering instructions directly from your fear of conflict and emotional chaos. It actively scans your environment for any data point that indicates vulnerability, distress, or weakness in the people around you. You automatically tune your attention to track the absolute brokenness of the world. Conversely, when your environment presents you with healthy, stable, self-sufficient individuals who require zero fixing, your brain categorizes those people as boring, uninteresting, or completely irrelevant to your survival, filtering them out of your social circles. Your conscious mind never receives the objective truth of your options. You are locked inside an insulated cognitive filter where your brain actively deletes all evidence of your potential peace, while hyper-focusing on every emotional storm, ensuring that you continuously attract chaotic individuals who reinforce your prison. While your selective attention filters are scanning your environment for chaos, your medial prefrontal cortex is running an automated status calculation based on social comparison theory that completely paralyzes your agency. Your brain calculates your safety and belonging by running continuous simulations of your relative value within the social hierarchy. However, this comparison engine operates on a highly asymmetric dataset. You experience your own internal reality from the inside out, meaning you are intimately aware of your internal processing friction, your profound daily fatigue, and the deep emptiness running through your nervous system. In contrast, you experience the people you fix from the outside in. You only see their active crises, their emotional outbursts, and their desperation for help. Your analytical brain automatically compares your raw internal processing framework with their highly vocal collapse. The system detects a massive structural mismatch. It reasons that if you drop your mask of strength and expose your own internal chaos, you will lose your unique status as the reliable safe haven of the group. The algorithm of your mind fails to calculate that you are fully entitled to your own limitations, transforming a normal biological fatigue into a personal feeling of deep psychological shame. To understand why the human brain reacts to other people's distress with such an intense, agonizing wave of physical dread, we must leave our modern contexts and look at the brutal survival realities of our evolutionary history. For over 99% of human history, your survival was entirely dependent on absolute integration and stability within a highly cooperative hunter-gatherer tribe. The primitive group functioned as a single unified organism. Within these ancient structures, if a member of the tribe became highly volatile, emotionally erratic, or socially disruptive, it represented an immediate deadly threat to the coordination of the hunt and the collective defense against apex predators. Emotional chaos within the group was a lethal hazard. Evolution fiercely selected against the passive individuals who ignored group distress, heavily favoring the individuals whose brains developed a hyperreactive, instinctual compulsion to actively restore social equilibrium. The fixer mechanism was an evolutionary masterpiece of stabilization. It intentionally built a mechanism where an individual experiences intense personal anxiety when someone near them is distressed, forcing them to mediate, soothe and resolve the conflict to ensure the tribe didn't fracture. The suffocating urgency you feel to fix someone today is the ancient software of a prehistoric sentinel who is terrified that if the fire goes out, the tribe will die. The persistent torment of the fixer trap is also heavily driven by an artificial neurochemical ceiling created by the clinical structure of dopamine prediction errors. Individuals trapped inside this existential loop almost always operate under a rigid cognitive framework that defines love and safety as a transaction based on continuous performance. When you successfully solve a crisis or calm an unstable person, your brain receives a temporary high-velocity burst of dopamine and oxytocin inside the reward circuit, driven by their relief and validation. This chemical surge provides an immediate, intoxicating feeling of temporary safety and control. However, your brain operates on the law of habituation, meaning that this unearned, external validation wears off within hours of the crisis being resolved. The unstable person returns to their baseline chaos, and your reward circuitry suffers an immediate, catastrophic drop. The dopamine pathway detects a massive negative prediction error, flooding your consciousness with a heavy sense of emptiness, fatigue, and panic. The fixer trap is a neurochemical mirage, because your brain fails to calculate the law of habituation when projecting your relationships. It treats the next crisis as the ultimate destination, where you will finally find permanent safety, completely unaware that it is chasing a state of constant chemical satisfaction that cannot physically exist within the architecture of human flesh. The long-term danger of living inside this caretaking loop is the severe accumulation of allostatic load caused by maintaining a constant professional shield for others. When your brain convinces you that you are responsible for the emotional baselines of adult strangers, your prefrontal cortex is forced to run a continuous background program dedicated entirely to hyper-vigilant monitoring and empathy suppression. You have to manually suppress your own sadness, freeze your own anger, and ignore your own physical pain just to remain strong enough to hold the weight of their chaos. From a neurological perspective, running this permanent lifeguard persona requires an immense non-stop expenditure of executive energy and glucose. Over years of continuous execution, this chronic energy split completely exhausts your nervous system's buffering capacity. The high allostatic load causes a systemic downregulation of your serotonin receptors, plunging your mind into a flat, grey state of chronic mental fatigue and clinical burnout. The energy required to keep your own boundaries from collapsing becomes so overwhelming that your resilience completely breaks down, proving that the fixer mechanism you use to secure short-term safety eventually extracts the ultimate long-term tax, the total destruction of your biological vitality. When we systematically look at this entire temporal process through a cold, clinical lens, we can perform an objective somatic autopsy on our caretaking urgency and completely strip it of its psychological power. The next time someone near you enters a state of chaos and you feel a sudden, suffocating wave of panic and physical fatigue settle into your chest, you must instantly recognize the mechanical order of operations inside your flesh. The racing heart, the tight throat, and the internal voice telling you that you must fix their life or suffer abandonment are not profound emotional truths. They are not an indication that you are responsible for their choices, that you are a failure if they are sad, or that you are inherently unlovable in your stillness. They are simply the physical, predictable consequence of an overtaxed mirror neuron system and a hyper-sensitized childhood amygdala running an ancient tribal stabilization protocol inside an evolutionary brainstem that doesn't understand that you are no longer a child in a volatile home. The terrifying thoughts of abandonment your mind manufactures during this window are completely empty. They are nothing more than a desperate fictional script written by an energy-starved prefrontal cortex trying to find an explanation for a raw, mismatched cortisol surge in your tissues. Breaking the cycle of compulsive fixing requires you to completely change how you respond to the 12-millisecond logic gap. You cannot stop your hyperactive mirror neurons from simulating the distress of others. Your brain is structurally wired to prioritize environmental reading speed over personal context. Your objective is not to wait for your empathy to magically disappear before you set boundaries, but to change your relationship to the tension. When the wave of corporate or personal chaos hits your environment, you must expect the biological delay. Instead of engaging with the compulsive urge to solve their problem, script their responses, or absorb their anger, your only goal is to look at the tension objectively, accept the unspent adrenaline, and say to yourself, "This is not my crisis. This is just the 12-millisecond glitch running an ancient tribal co-regulation loop." By removing the moral shame and the mental narrative from the sensation, you give your prefrontal cortex the time it needs to lower its threat alarm, establish your physical boundaries, and naturally return your body to a state of calm, unpolluted authority. Thank you for watching this explanation. If you want to understand more about the silent biological mechanics that dictate our daily human struggles, consider subscribing to the channel. This library is a growing archive dedicated strictly to the deep science of why the mind and body operate this way. No trends, no shortcuts, just the objective truth of our shared biology. Explore the rest of the archive to understand your mind, and I will see you in the next breakdown.